The day of my husband's funeral was already a whirlwind of grief and shock. Relatives gathered. Their faces mirrored my sorrow, yet a palpable tension filled the room. Amid the tearful eulogies, my mother-in-law stood with an icy demeanor. Her voice cut through the air like a knife, delivering a line that left the entire room gasping. "He didn't just belong to you." My hands trembled as I faced her, realizing I couldn't just let it go. What followed next, nobody saw coming. The day of my husband's funeral was already a whirlwind of grief and shock. We had lost him so suddenly that none of us had been prepared for this. Each moment felt like a heavy, hazy blur. I walked through the day in a daze, feeling the veil of sorrow hanging over me as I tried to make sense of a world without him. Relatives gathered. Their faces mirrored my sorrow, yet a palpable tension filled the room. It was more than just grief. There was a strange air of unease. People whispered in hushed tones, their eyes darting around as if searching for answers. Even amid our shared loss, it felt as though something unsaid was hanging in the air, waiting to be discovered. Amid the tearful eulogies, my mother-in-law stood with an icy demeanor. While others cried and shared heartfelt memories, she remained strangely composed. Her eyes were cold, and her expression revealed nothing of the warmth or compassion I'd hoped for. It was puzzling, and the unease in the room seemed to grow stronger with her presence, making me wonder what she was holding back. Her voice cut through the air like a knife, delivering a line that left the entire room gasping. "He didn't just belong to you." As the words echoed in the silence, I felt a chill run down my spine. All the eyes turned toward her in shock, and some darted back to me, waiting for my reaction. This was the last thing I expected to hear during the funeral. My hands trembled as I faced her, realizing I couldn't just let it go. What followed next, nobody saw coming. The grief, the shock, and now this unexpected confrontation, it was all too much. I felt anger rising within me. My lips parted, and the words left my mouth before I could stop them. The room held its breath, waiting for what was to come from this sudden escalation. I quickly regained my composure, feeling the weight of the room's eyes on me. It was important to keep my dignity amid the swirling emotions. Taking a deep breath, I steadied myself and tried to respond in a way that wouldn't further ignite the already simmering tensions. But it felt almost impossible. The burning questions in my mind demanded answers. I scanned the room, noticing how some relatives exchanged uncomfortable glances. It was as if they had anticipated something like this, or perhaps they knew more than they let on. Each close-knit cluster of whispers seemed to carry a secret. The tension was thick enough to cut, and it only intensified my need to unravel the mystery behind my mother-in-law's shocking words. Fragments of earlier tensions between me and my in-laws replayed in my mind. There had always been an undercurrent of strain in our relationship, but I never imagined it would surface like this. Every minor disagreement and cold shoulder now seemed to point to a deeper, more troubling discontent. The puzzle pieces were starting to come together, but the picture was far from complete. I felt the rising need to uncover the meaning behind my mother-in-law's shocking statement. It was more than curiosity. It was a burning necessity for understanding. Why did she choose now to reveal such a thing? What was she hiding? The questions swirled in my mind, and I knew I couldn't find peace without confronting her, hoping that it would finally bring some clarity. The service continued, but I was consumed by an urge to confront her immediately afterwards. Every word spoken at the podium, every tear shed, felt like it was in the background as my focus narrowed on her. I could feel my pulse in my ears, my determination growing stronger. This was not just about me, but about understanding the truth, and finding closure in this painful chapter. As the service came to an end, guests began to murmur about my mother-in-law's words. Her shocking statement lingered in the air, fueling conversations filled with speculation. Some guests shook their heads in disbelief, while others exchanged knowing looks. The atmosphere was charged with curiosity and confusion. It was clear that her words had significantly impacted everyone, making the end of the service anything but peaceful. I approached my mother-in-law as she stood by the reception hall entrance. Her expression remained unreadable as I neared her, my heart pounding in my chest. It took all my strength to remain calm and composed. The immediate urge to demand answers was overwhelming, but I knew I had to tread carefully. As I got closer, her eyes met mine, revealing nothing of what was to come. Our conversation started civilly, but quickly escalated into a heated confrontation. I tried to ask her about the meaning behind her cryptic statement, but her evasive answers only fueled my frustration. My voice grew louder, matching the rising tension between us. Her calm demeanor began to crack, revealing glimpses of a deep-seated resentment. It was clear that this was not going to be an easy conversation. She deflected my questions with cryptic remarks and a knowing smile. Every answer she gave felt like a riddle, leaving me more confused than ever. Her unwillingness to provide a straight answer was infuriating. I could feel my patience wearing thin as she continued to dance around the truth. It was as if she enjoyed keeping me in the dark, her smile growing more smug with each passing second. Her evasiveness only deepened my determination to get to the bottom of her statement. I refused to let her have the last word, especially with so much at stake. My questions became more pointed, demanding clarity. She remained composed, her smile never faltering, but I could see a flicker of something in her eyes, a hint that she knew more than she was letting on. I wasn't going to give up. Back home, I decided to search through my husband's belongings for answers. The house felt eerily quiet as I began my search, each step echoing through the empty rooms. I started with his personal items, hoping to find something that could shed light on the mystery. It was an invasion of his privacy, but I felt it was necessary. I needed to understand what my mother-in-law had meant. I felt a pang of guilt as I sorted through his personal items. His belongings were a tangible reminder of the life we had shared, and rummaging through them felt wrong. Yet, the need for answers outweighed my hesitation. Each object I touched brought back memories, making the search even more difficult. Still, I pressed on, determined to uncover whatever secrets he might have kept hidden. In one drawer, I found a collection of letters that immediately stood out. They were tied together with a faded ribbon, their edges worn from handling. My hands shook as I picked them up, feeling the weight of their significance. I carefully untied the ribbon and began to read. The first few lines hinted at a secret relationship, but the details were frustratingly vague. I needed more answers. The letters hinted at a secret relationship, but were frustratingly vague. Each letter was written with a tenderness that suggested deep emotions, but they lacked specific details. Names and places were conspicuously absent, leaving me to piece together the puzzle on my own. The more I read, the more questions arose. Who was the author of these letters? And what did this relationship mean for our marriage? My heart raced as I realized there might be another woman or family involved. The implications were staggering, and I felt a mix of anger and betrayal. The possibility that he had lived a double life was almost too much to bear. But as painful as it was, I couldn't stop now. I needed to know the full truth, no matter how devastating it might be. I knew I had to find out more about the person mentioned in the letters. The cryptic hints and emotional tones of the letters drove me nearly mad with curiosity. Each note was a thread, and I couldn't resist pulling on them, no matter where they led. I prepared myself for whatever the truth might be, knowing it would change everything about how I saw my husband. Using the scant information I had, I tracked down an address. It took hours of online digging and phone calls to old friends and acquaintances of my husband. Finally, I had something concrete, a place where I might find the answers I sought. My heart pounded as I held the piece of paper with the address on it, realizing this could uncover the truth behind the letters. I arrived at a small, unassuming house, feeling a mix of dread and curiosity. The house was modest, with a neat garden and a white picket fence. I stood at the gate for a moment, gathering my courage, and then walked up the path to the front door. My legs felt like lead as I approached, anxiety mingling with the desperate need to know the truth. The woman who answered the door seemed wary but invited me inside. She had an air of caution about her, as if she knew this day might come but wasn't entirely prepared for it. I introduced myself and explained my reason for being there. Her eyes softened a little, and she stepped aside to let me in. The house felt warm and inviting, yet filled with tense anticipation. As we talked, she confirmed she had a relationship with my husband. Her voice was steady, tinged with a sadness that mirrored my own. She spoke of their time together, filled with both happy and bittersweet moments. It was clear that they had shared something genuine, something that felt like a betrayal to me, but was deeply meaningful to her. Each word she spoke was like a pinprick to my heart. The woman's revelations filled me with anger and betrayal, but also a strange sense of relief. Yes, my husband had secrets, but now I felt closer to understanding the whole picture. The anger burned inside me, but there was also a lifting of the fog that had clouded my mind since his death. She was not the villain here, just another person caught in the web of his complicated life. She showed me photos and messages that confirmed their relationship. Each image and text she presented was a piece of the puzzle, fitting perfectly into the story of their hidden life. The photos captured moments of genuine happiness, further proving the depth of their connection. It was painful to see, but also oddly clarifying. It helped me understand the man I thought I knew, and the secrets he had kept. Our conversation was tense and emotional, revealing complexities I hadn't anticipated. We both choked back our emotions, navigating the delicate dance of sharing painful truths. She spoke of her love for him, and I, in turn, shared about our marriage. It was as if we were unveiling two different parts of his life, each significant in its own right. This wasn't a simple betrayal. It was a tangled mess of love and secrecy. I left her house grappling with a torrent of conflicting emotions. Anger, sadness, relief, and confusion swirled within me, fighting for dominance. The drive home was a blur, my mind replaying our entire conversation, trying to make sense of it all. I felt like I was standing on the edge of a precipice, teetering between the past I thought I knew and the reality that had been hidden from me. Back home, I avoided my mother-in-law, uncertain about my next steps. Her icy demeanor and cryptic comments seemed even more sinister now, knowing what I did. I kept to myself, trying to process everything I had learned. The house felt different, filled with the echoes of truths just revealed. I needed time to think, to figure out how to move forward with this new, painful knowledge. The weight of my discoveries hung over me like a dark cloud. Every interaction felt strained, and each moment without answers seemed to stretch on forever. I found it hard to focus on anything else. Even the most mundane tasks were overshadowed by the enormity of what I had learned. The truth wasn't just something to uncover. It was a storm gathering on the horizon, waiting to break. I tried to avoid family gatherings, but questions were starting to surface. I couldn't hide forever, and each missed event only led to more suspicion. The family dynamic was fractured, subtle glances and pointed questions becoming harder to ignore. People were beginning to murmur about my absence, and the stories they concocted were likely far from the truth. It was becoming impossible to escape what was coming. Relatives began to sense that something was amiss. Their questions became more frequent and pointed, probing into areas I wasn't ready to discuss. The weight of their curiosity bore down on me, making it clear that I couldn't avoid the situation much longer. It was like everyone could see the edge of the storm cloud, but couldn't understand the impending downpour. I had to prepare for their inevitable inquiries. My mother-in-law's cryptic smile at these gatherings only added fuel to the fire. Her knowing glances and bemused expressions suggested she enjoyed the chaos. Each event felt like a stage, with her pulling strings from behind the curtain. The more she smiled, the more others seemed to pick up on the underlying tension. It was as if she was waiting for the perfect moment to drop another bombshell. I knew I had to confront her with what I had learned. Avoiding the issue was only making things worse, and the family deserved to know the truth. It was clear that my mother-in-law held the key to many of the mysteries plaguing me. Summoning the courage to face her head-on was daunting, but it was the only way to bring light to this dark cloud hanging over all of us. Summoning all my courage, I arranged a private meeting with my mother-in-law. The anticipation was nerve-wracking, but it was a step I had to take. I chose a neutral location to minimize any emotional outbursts. As I waited for her to arrive, my thoughts raced with the possible outcomes of our conversation. Each passing minute felt like an eternity, heightening my resolve to get the answers I needed. She seemed unfazed, almost expecting my confrontation. Her composed demeanor only heightened my irritation. It was as if she had been waiting for this moment all along. We exchanged pleasantries, but the tension between us was palpable. She watched me with a calculated calmness, her eyes never leaving mine. It felt like a high-stakes game of chess, and I was determined to make the next move count. I presented the letters and photos from the other woman. Each piece of evidence felt like a blow, but I kept my composure. She remained silent, her face giving nothing away. I laid everything out, hoping to elicit some reaction. The room felt thick with unspoken words, every second stretching painfully. My heart pounded in my chest as I waited for her to break the silence, revealing the truth. Instead of being surprised, she had a knowing look in her eyes. It was clear that she was familiar with every detail. Her lack of shock only confirmed my suspicions that she had been keeping secrets all along. The realization was a bitter pill to swallow, but it steeled my resolve. I needed to hear her side of the story, no longer satisfied with half-truths and obscured realities. She then dropped another bombshell. The other woman's family had attended the funeral too. My mind raced, trying to piece together the implications of this revelation. The web of secrets seemed to grow even more complex. The woman and her family had been right there, mourning alongside us, hidden in plain sight. This new information demanded a deeper understanding, and I was determined to get it. My shock quickly turned into a need for confirmation. I couldn't just take her word for it. I needed to be sure this wasn't some cruel, twisted joke. With my mind racing, I decided to dig deeper. There was no turning back now. The implications of her words weighed heavily on me, and I felt a burning desire to unravel this tangled web. I sought out familiar faces from the funeral, hoping to piece together more details. Each person I approached seemed to wear a mask of sorrow and confusion. I discreetly asked questions, trying not to arouse too much suspicion. As fragmented pieces of information trickled in, the puzzle started to take shape. It was a slow and painstaking process, but each snippet of conversation brought me one step closer to understanding. Each piece of the puzzle slowly started to fall into place. Conversations with relatives and friends revealed small details, each contributing to the growing picture of my husband's hidden life. The more I learned, the more I realized how complex and deeply rooted this secret was. It wasn't just a fleeting affair, it was a whole other life he had kept from me. The enormity of it all was overwhelming. I contacted the other woman again, seeking clarity and closure. It took all my courage to dial her number, my fingers trembling with anticipation and fear. We agreed to meet in a quiet cafe, away from prying eyes. The wait felt eternal, each minute ticking by agonizingly slow. I was desperate for answers, hoping that this second conversation would provide the clarity I so desperately needed. This time, our conversation was more open and sincere. We sat across from each other, the initial tension giving way to a mutual understanding. She spoke candidly about her relationship with my husband, answering questions I had been too afraid to ask before. Each word she spoke felt like a puzzle piece sliding into place, gradually forming a clearer picture of the man we had both loved. She admitted they had 2 children together, who also attended the funeral. The revelation hit me like a truck, leaving me reeling. I had been oblivious to their presence, mourning my husband while his other family was right there among us. The thought of those innocent children mourning their father added another layer of complexity to my emotions. It was another piece of the puzzle that made everything more real and painful. I felt an overwhelming sense of betrayal, but also a strange kinship with her. Despite everything, we shared a bond through our love for him. Our tears and shared stories revealed how deeply interconnected our lives had been without our knowledge. It felt like looking into a mirror, seeing a reflection of my own grief and confusion. This unexpected connection softened the edges of my anger, making room for empathy. We shared stories of our lives with him, realizing how little we truly knew. Each story she told was like a glimpse into a parallel universe, where my husband lived a different life. I found myself recounting moments from our marriage, only to see them through a new lens. The realization was heartbreaking but also enlightening, as it highlighted the many facets of a man we both loved dearly. I started questioning everything about my marriage and my late husband. Every memory, every shared moment, felt tainted by the revelations. Was our love real, or was it all just a facade? The questions gnawed at me, making it hard to trust anything I had once held dear. I needed to find a way to reconcile these conflicting truths and rebuild my understanding of our life together. I knew I needed to confront my mother-in-law one final time. Her earlier cryptic statements and cold demeanor suggested she knew more than she had let on. Armed with the information I had gathered, I felt ready to demand the truth from her. It was time to face her and get the answers that only she could provide, so I could finally put this painful chapter to rest. With newfound determination, I arranged a family meeting. It felt like the only way to bring everything out into the open and finally get the answers we all deserved. I sent out calls and messages to everyone involved, making sure they understood the gravity of the situation. The anticipation was nerve-wracking, but I knew it was a necessary step in unraveling the truth behind my husband's double life. Relatives arrived, sensing the gravity of the situation. Faces were tense and expectant as they settled into the living room, each person clutching their own version of shared grief and curiosity. Conversations were hushed, the air thick with the knowledge that this wasn't just a casual get-together. Everyone could sense that what was about to be revealed would change our family forever. I began by revealing everything I had discovered about my husband's double life. Each word felt heavy as I laid out the letters, photographs, and messages that painted a picture no one could have anticipated. Eyes widened and jaws dropped as the puzzle pieces clicked into place. This was far more complex than a simple affair. It was a hidden world he had kept from us all. The room was filled with gasps, tears, and angry outbursts. Some relatives couldn't hold back their disbelief, while others sobbed openly. The air was electric with emotion as people grappled with the magnitude of the revelations. Siblings clutched each other, and cousins exchanged furious whispers. My mother-in-law finally admitted she had known all along. Her confession landed like a bombshell, adding another layer of complexity to the already tangled mess. She stood in the corner, eyes downcast, as she quietly revealed that she had been aware of my husband's other life. The shock was palpable, adding fuel to the firestorm of emotions already raging in the room. Her admission explained her cryptic statements and cold demeanor. The pieces finally started to fit together. Every icy glance, every mysterious comment suddenly made sense. She had been protecting a secret that had weighed heavily on her for years. While it brought some clarity, it didn't ease the pain of betrayal felt by the rest of the family. Her actions, or lack thereof, were a bitter pill to swallow. Family members were torn between anger at her secrecy and empathy for her struggle. Some couldn't believe she had kept such a monumental secret, while others understood the burden she must have carried. Voices were raised, some defending her, others accusing her of complicity. The room was a maelstrom of mixed emotions, with everyone trying to process the tangled web of deceit. I demanded to know why she never told me the truth. My voice was sharp, cutting through the cacophony of family arguments. The weight of the secrets had been heavy, and I needed to understand her reasons. Her eyes met mine, filled with a mixture of regret and defiance, as she prepared to explain her actions. It was a moment I had been waiting for, a chance to finally get the answers I needed. She revealed that she had hoped to spare me the pain and protect her grandchildren. Her words were measured, carefully chosen to convey her complex emotions. She had believed that keeping the secret would help preserve the family's happiness, misguided as that might have been. Her reasoning elicited mixed reactions. Some nodded in understanding, while others shook their heads in disbelief. It was a poor justification for such a monumental deceit. Her reasoning filled me with a mix of understanding and anger at her choices. On one hand, I could see how she thought she was protecting me and her grandchildren. On the other hand, it felt like a betrayal of the highest order. The duality of my emotions was overwhelming, leaving me torn between empathy for her struggle and anger over her lies. This was a wound that would take a long time to heal. I shared my feelings openly, acknowledging the pain, but expressing a desire to move forward. It took every ounce of courage to voice my thoughts, but it felt liberating. The room was silent as I spoke, each word heavy with emotion. I emphasized the need to heal as a family, to find a way to navigate this complicated grief. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but it was a necessary step. Family members began to voice their own perspectives, creating a heated yet cathartic discussion. Each person had their own unique take on the situation, and emotions ran high. There were tears, raised voices, and even laughter as we shared our feelings. The atmosphere was charged, but it felt like a necessary release. For the first time, we were addressing the elephant in the room, and it felt strangely unifying. We collectively decided to meet the other family to address the situation openly. It was a bold move, but one that promised a chance for genuine reconciliation. The decision was met with mixed emotions, from apprehension to hopeful anticipation. We made plans for the meeting, knowing it would be tense but crucial. The resolve to come together and face the truth head-on marked a turning point for us all. Meeting them was tense but ultimately healing as we began to bridge our fractured lives. The atmosphere was thick with unease at first, but gradually, barriers began to break down. We shared stories, exchanged apologies, and acknowledge the pain we had all suffered. It was a long and difficult conversation, but it paved the way for mutual understanding. What once felt like an insurmountable divide started to feel more like a bridge. In time, we found a way to coexist, honoring my husband's memory in a more honest way. We set aside our differences and focused on the common ground, the love we all had for him. Family gatherings became less about the past and more about building a future where everyone felt included. Slowly, the wounds began to heal, replaced by a newfound sense of unity. We had finally found a way to move forward together. Through this painful journey, I learned the importance of truth and forgiveness. It wasn't easy, and it certainly wasn't quick, but it was necessary. I realized that hiding from the truth only prolongs the pain, and that forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, but rather letting go of the hurt. These lessons became the cornerstone of our new family dynamic, guiding us through the complexities of our intertwined lives. We slowly built new relationships, grounded in the reality of our shared loss and love. The process was gradual, each step forward marked by small victories and moments of understanding. Our gatherings became spaces of support and shared memories rather than tension and secrecy. In the end, the love we all had for my husband became the foundation upon which we rebuilt our lives, stronger and more connected than ever before.